chat about our Lightning future. So I think before we sort of go deeper into where the Lightning future is, I think it'd be interesting just to comment a little bit about where we are today in Lightning adoption. Now, I had a quick look on mempool.space and looked at the Lightning Explorer, and as an example, you can see there's about 15,000 Lightning nodes today, roughly, and there's about 5,000 Bitcoins worth in public channels on the Lightning Network. So I can understand, in one sense, people could say, oh, look, see, there's actually not that much Lightning adoption. But on the other hand, we see nation-state adoption. El Salvador has Chivo Wallet, and that has Lightning support, and it's open. It's not this kind of closed walled garden custodial thing. You can transact in and out with the Lightning Network. So I'm curious where you guys see the Lightning Network today. You can sort of see both a bear case and a bull case, right?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I mean, we hear this a lot. I think that a lot of people like to really discuss, like, is Lightning being adopted? Is it really taking off? Like, how is that all functioning? And I think that there's a few nuances to really call out here, and that the Lightning Network is not like a public ledger like Bitcoin is, the base layer, or any other blockchain for that matter. And so there's a lot of things that happen inside a Lightning Network that are private. It's a very private network, which is obviously a feature and not a bug, in that all of the people want to see, when you're thinking about adoption, like who is using this and how, you really want to think about how, what are the number of payments that are happening across the network? How fast are they going? What is the value of those? All of those things are inherently private inside of the network. And so it's really hard to actually quantify the amount of adoption that is happening because it's a private network, which is a very good thing. But that ultimately leads to it being really hard to understand or really to mentally grok. Solana says, oh, we have 40,000 TPS or whatever. Well, you can see that on their blockchain, which is that has faults of its own, which we don't need to get into. But there's no public count of transactions inside of the Lightning Network, which is a great thing. And so we look at the metrics that we can see: number of nodes, number of channels, number of channel capacity, which are all decent metrics, to see some of the activity. But again, you can have private channels, you can have private liquidity, you can have all of these things that are inherently private. So it's hard to quantify it by the numbers in a public sense. There's a lot of people that self-report, like River or OpenNode or some of those companies that do a pretty good job of reporting their metrics. So all that we can do is really rely on the people that are using it to kind of talk about it. And from our perspective, adoption has been just insane over the last year. We see things like El Salvador and all of the nation states that are adopting it. And then we have had just a huge influx in customers asking about it, trying to learn more about it. And that's both Bitcoin companies that want to adopt Lightning, as well as companies that are completely outside of Bitcoin or the crypto space or anything, and they just see it as this superior payment technology, and they want to be a part of that. So yeah, Justin?
Yeah, I would also echo that there's a lot of people building on this network, but we're at a very, very early stage. In order for adoption, I think, to increase, you need builders, you need entrepreneurs, you need companies. I think we're at the very early stages. Think of the web before you had Squarespace and internet, things to build websites, and now we're at just the very primitive stages to even build applications. Voltage is a provider that allows a developer like ourselves to build apps on top of Lightning. So we're just at a very early stage of the primitives of the protocol, but the world is our oyster.
And I think those are totally fair statements to make, right? You can kind of make a bear case and you can make a bull case. But what matters is what people are creating and what people are building, such as yourselves. So let's talk a little bit about Lightning services that are, let's say, yet to be created or popularized. Do you have any ideas on what's out there that, or what ideas that are yet to be created?
For me, obviously, I'm building social media on Lightning. So the concept being that any piece of content is an active opportunity for a payment. But if you take a step back and try to think about what Lightning can do, Lightning makes money liquid. Lightning makes money like fluid, like water, where you can actually transfer value between individuals, and the use cases become almost limitless. You think of any application where you want to transfer value, arguably the most important piece of data is money, and it makes this monetary instrument active to pay for anything. It could be that post on social media, but it also could unwrap for almost any application. So I think the use cases are almost limitless when we think about streaming money, right? So imagine the streaming video concept, or even streaming for, you stream for podcasts, but streaming for music. the ability to send money as if it was liquid across the internet instantly with instant settlement. I think those are the unpacks that we haven't even really unlocked yet. And also the ability to stop spam on the internet, right? We've talked a lot about how you can use staking inside of Lightning payments to actually prevent spam on the internet or prevent bots. So there's all this prevention mechanisms, but also the innovation of like what happens if payments are involved with everything.
Yeah, and like to build on that, I think that we get asked this question a lot of like, what is a killer app? Like, what are people building? All of those things, and I think that at the end of the day, like Lightning is the superior payment technology. That that gets reiterated a lot. And when you think about it, it's maybe boring to think about just payments, but when you kind of really process that, payments are, everyone in the world uses payments, whether it's a local currency or seashells or whatever it is, everyone does payments. And if we can develop a technology, which is the Lightning Network, to give the best experience on top of the best money, that enables an incredible amount of features and applications to be built. And when you think about the cryptography that goes into Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, you can really tie into that, just like Justin was just mentioning, of being able to leverage that cryptography to do things like feature gating or spam prevention or any of these things. That is one of the biggest innovations of the Lightning Network itself. When you think about Visa Network or something, there's no way, it's entirely trust-based, obviously, and there's no way to actually cryptographically prove that a payment was made and unlock some piece of content for it or something like that. And that is possible inside of the Lightning Network. And so it enables us to build much better, much richer experiences inside of the internet that is just not possible anywhere else. And I think that being able to do cryptographically verified payments is going to just revolutionize the way that everyone interacts with each other and the internet itself.
So there's a lot of cases, as you mentioned. It can be payments, it could be social media, it could be making the user experience really slick to log into a website. We're seeing, as an example, so people who might not be aware, there's this thing called LNURL, and there's a way where you can use the authentication aspect of that to log into websites. And so this is something that we're seeing with certain websites, and you can log in using your Lightning wallet in a way. Now, you're not making a payment, you're just logging in. And so that's what kind of opportunities are there for business, commerce, even non-business opportunities are there that people can collaborate on things together. So there's lots of opportunities there. I think it might also be interesting to chat a little bit about how businesses and users can interact with this network. So I guess, Graham, you're the first person to talk to about this in terms of how are businesses interacting with the Lightning Network, using yourselves or other related services.
Yeah, I think picking it back on what I just kind of rambled about is that when you think about payments and this superior payment technology, well, that applies to everything. That applies to gaming. That applies to social media. That applies to, global remittances. All of those things. And from us, we see that adoption across the board. We have gaming companies. We have just traditional payment processors. All of those things leveraging it. And so when you put the superior payment technology on top of the best money, there's no other solution that is even going to hold a torch to it. And so we see a lot of adoption across the board. And we see people doing really, really unique things like Synoda, doing kind of energy contracts on top of Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. And those types of things they're just scratching the surface on what's possible. And so what we're seeing is, one, a lot of innovation of new people like Justin and Synoda and those types that are building these completely new experiences that were never possible before. And then we also see, like I mentioned, of these traditional financial institutions that hear about Bitcoin and Lightning. They understand that it is faster, cheaper, better than the rails that they're using today. And they want a piece of that. They want to, you think about the billions of dollars that they're transacting with. If you can go from a 1 or 2% transaction fee to 0.5% or 1/4% or even less than that, that's substantial amounts of money saved and more revenue for them. And so they understand that. They're looking at that, and that's one of my most interesting people that we're talking with is just people that don't necessarily aren't the hardcore Bitcoiners. They just understand this technology and what it's capable of.
Yeah, and I think that if we look at the proxies, let's say just related to the creator economy, if you look at applications like Patreon or OnlyFans, typically there's 5 different companies that are in between the creator and the fan that take a cut of that financial relationship. And often there's a 30 to 60 day window for that payment to finally clear. But what we're seeing and what we're unlocking with Lightning is that when a fan sends a creator a payment, and the proxy is we had 120,000 Lightning transactions between creators and fans in the first 5 months of Zion, they have a finite instant settlement of that transaction right away. So now that wallet can be used to do other things if they want to buy things, if they want to clear it out. If they even want to convert that instantly to fiat currency, they can do that, where there's this 30 to 60 day window of inefficiency. So imagine what happens when all of these businesses and the inefficiencies across the creator economy, not just the ad business, but even the direct support business, can be bifurcated because of the technology. So I think as an entrepreneur, it's just much easier. There was no way that I could have launched a company and within a few months launched a payment network that did 120,000 transactions, and I didn't have to code any payment technology. It was just like, I got to call Graham, let's get some nodes running, put a couple channels up, off to the races. Like, that innovation is amazing because that took companies and years, and I think those things are, once entrepreneurs can see there's an unlock here, that you can cut out all these middlemen, that's the revenue arbitrage that will build great businesses.
Right, and as an example, I think it allows people to just post up a QR code and they can take donations very quickly. And what we are now seeing is an example. I'll give an example as well. I know Perth Heat, they're a baseball team in Australia, and they've recently put up this idea where you can basically scan the QR and tip that athlete. So you can just scan the TV and make a Lightning payment just instantly, just like this. So this is the kind of thing where people are just making it possible where it just wasn't feasible. Like, it just was not even a thing before. So we're sort of getting into that idea of, well, what are some of the killer apps for Lightning? Do you have any ideas? Of course, we're trying to predict things here, but do you have any speculations?
Yeah, I think that's hard. I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think we've kind of discussed the opportunities, and I think when you really dig into what is possible and how you can do it, I think that the peer-to-peer network that Justin was just mentioning is one of the greatest benefits that this can bring, in that instead of trusting these 5 institutions along the way, then everyone is solvent in the middle. We learned about that this week, and how that can work. Instead, just going creator to consumer, directly is going to enable, again, new experiences, just a whole plethora of opportunity across the board, and that can really apply to almost anything. And additionally, something that when I talk to people a lot, I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of short-sighted, and that they think that what the Lightning Network is today and how it functions is like the final state of the network, which is completely untrue. That the amount of innovation that is happening behind the scenes at the protocol level, at the app level, all of these things are being innovated at a very, very fast pace. And the Lightning Network that's going to exist next year, that's going to exist 5 years from now, is going to look entirely different and have even more robust functionality. And so even talking about what is possible today isn't even accounting for what is going to be possible next year, and so on and so forth. And I think that it's really hard to extrapolate that out of the amount of opportunity that is going to come in this space in the coming years or months even is going to be very substantial.
I will also add, I think the brilliance of Lightning is it allows for instant interoperability. So the day of Zion launch, it was interoperable with Cash App, Strike, Moon, and we have no relationship with these companies. We have no APIs, we have nothing that we've ever talked to these people, but these applications are completely interoperable across this network. The other thing is that Lightning allows us as a company to actually distribute value between 2 people without inventing some fucking token. And I think the problem with the general industry, and I've seen this because I worked in the ad space for almost 10 years, is that a lot of people are trying to make up money. They're trying to make up their own version of money, and they're trying to say, hey, creators, here's a way that you can create a relationship with your fans, and here's a token. But now we have the hardest money ever created that can move at the speed of light across 2 individuals without all of this fucking nonsense. And I think this is the interesting thing that Lightning, thank you very much. I think that's the interesting thing that Lightning's allowing for, is instant true money transfer, instant true value transfer, and this absolute interoperability across the world without nonsense.
And actually, one point just to add to what you were saying as well is, for years and years, people have almost been misselling this idea that a zero confirmation transaction is secure, but actually it's not. And so, as an example, even just today, I bought a jumper for my wife, and I paid with Lightning, and it was just an instant thing. It was done within a few seconds. We didn't have to sit there and wait for confirmations. And so that factor of being able to do in-person commerce, even for in-person commerce, that you can set up, you can have your Lightning wallet on your phone or on a tablet, and you can take payment just like this. And so I think it just opens up all of these possibilities.
And I want to add is that the compounding network effect of building a Lightning business is a little bit different than a lot of these other walled gardens. What people talk about in the traditional web space, and particularly the app space, is what is the network effect of your individual application? But when I'm looking at building like a Lightning company, we're both looking at this as, I look at the entirety of the network as a user for Zion. Any new user to the Lightning network is now a user on top of Zion and interoperably across the web. So now we have a group of companies, a group of individuals, a worldwide collective that can create a network effect, and all these applications can now work together. And I think that impact is a little bit different, because all these other companies are trying to build the next walled garden. Come to my blockchain, come to my this, come to my that. It's the same thing, just with different marketing, with different aspects. But again, the interoperability of any user of Lightning becomes a user of our applications. And I think that's the beauty of what can be unlocked in terms of companies.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate what you were saying about, like, when you think about the, if you're earning money doing podcasting or something not outside of the Lightning Network, you can't pay for a drink back there with your podcast funds that are in some service or whatnot. But when you think about a Lightning-enabled podcasting service, you can. It's all so interoperable that you can, I can stream sats to you for your podcast, and then you can go buy a drink with it within 5 seconds of that. And being able to just interconnect all of these things is fascinating, and it also enables so much opportunity that it defeats the walled gardens that Justin's talking about.
And so, and the point as well being made, I think there are parallels with the internet and how people would try to create their own little private intranet as opposed to building the open internet. Now, of course, the internet it's not perfect. There are privacy issues with that too. So I guess maybe some people might be thinking, well, what about like the security aspects of Lightning? We saw recently there was a bug with LND. How do you see the network and the community reacting to some of these things?
I think everyone understands the place that we're at, and as far as like the technology and its evolution and things we have improvements to be made like across the board, and I think that most people understand that, and I think that ultimately it comes down to we need more people working on this, like on every aspect of the spectrum. And when you think about the amount of people that are wanting to come and adopt this technology and the amount of like developers, Lightning developers or Bitcoin developers that are there's not enough developers to actually support the amount of adoption that is coming. And so we really need to increase the amount of people that are working on this. It's not going to fix all the bugs. We got to really work on things like that. But generally speaking, we need more activity inside of people building on this, for one, and then also just getting more developers in the ecosystem so we can really start to work on these things faster and make them more robust and develop that future that I was talking about earlier.
Everyone tries to make a big nothing burger out of nothing. Nobody lost any funds. Yeah. End of story. Nobody lost any money. It's just a bug. Shit happens. Like, when people make big deals out of these things, like, nobody lost money, so why the fuck are we complaining about it? Like, let's move on and like execute. Stop bullshitting. Like, a lot of this is just bullshit, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a fair point, and I think we are moving into a stage where the payment reliability is far improved. I think that's also an important point, that if you were to use the Lightning Network 3 years ago, it was very early days. And nowadays, you have consumer-grade applications. We've all got them on our phones. We can pay for things, receive things. So that, I think, that improvement has come leaps and bounds. And I think that's a very fair point to make. So I guess if we could sort of wave our magic wand, what kind of advancements would you like to see in terms of what's reasonably coming up with Lightning? Do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see?
I mean, yeah, like there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot being worked on that, us in our position in the network, there's a lot of like lower level protocol things that I want to see happen. So really interested in things like splicing and a lot of the improvements inside of like, node reliability and the node implementations that are out there. And there's even things beyond that of like PTLCs and all those things. But there's a lot happening at that lower level. Which is really great, but it's also like incredibly hard to keep up with actually all of the things that are happening out there. And so really, I think that with all of these innovations that I'm kind of mentioning, it's going to ultimately drip down to the user to where you will have a better experience. You'll have higher payment reliability, faster payments, easier onboarding, all of these things. And so we really got to solve some of those problems at the lowest level, and then we're going to work our way up into the user. And so that's what I'm really excited for over the coming months and years, is to really improve that user experience and to do it like in a true non-custodial way that takes a huge amount of effort at the protocol level. If I'm trying to solve UX in a custodial wallet, that's easy. I can just submit my code and ship it, and that's great. If you're trying to change these things and improve the UX at a non-custodial level, that takes protocol level changes and adoption, like all of those things, and that's significantly harder and takes a lot more time. And that's why people talk about, the Lightning Network's been in production for how many years, and it's only got this much. Well, we're building things in a very methodical way to really make sure that we're doing this in the correct manner. We see what happens when you build fast and you build it wrong, and we aren't doing that inside of Bitcoin and Lightning. And to solve things in the proper way just takes a lot of time and execution.
So I have an opposite answer, because Graham is the genius. I think that my goal of building one of the biggest businesses in the Lightning Network is to make Lightning a part of culture. I think where we as Bitcoiners, and what we haven't done a really good job of, and is that we are not sitting at the edges of culture, of where is culture actually happening within our world. We're not sitting next to the things around art, around fashion, around architecture, around music. We're not next to all the things that are actually pushing life forward. And my role in this industry, I believe, and what I want to bring with Zion is we want to be at the edges of culture. We want Lightning to be the underlying infrastructure that drives culture. We want to be an industry that talks to the hackers and the painters simultaneously. That's the edge that I want to build. And like, if I'm thinking about my magic wand, is that we are building a cultural movement around a system that believes in not only hard money, but it believes in a system that's better for people, it's better for creators, it's better for fans. Everything is much better in this world, but we have to do that at the edges of culture, not just technology. Geniuses like him can do the tech side, and I want to bleed into that edge of culture. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great spot to finish up. So can everyone please put your hands together for Graham and Justin. Thank you.
Thank you.